Premed Office Hours, episode 171. I don't think this is episode 171. I think we had 171 last week, but I don't know, whatever it is. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your moderator for the day. I guess co-host, since there's just two of us. I don't have to moderate you, Dina. I'll just co-host with you.
Sure.
Creator of the Premed Years podcast, or host of the Premed Years podcast, author of the Premed Playbook series, all those kinds of fun things. But my best title is colleague of Dina Golini,
What's your best title?
Former senior admissions officer, your Stanford School of Medicine, former assistant director of advising at Brown University's Warren Alpert Medical School. You said they changed that name, though. We should update that, right? Or is that the updated one?
Alpert Medical School,
Yeah,
AMS.
Yeah. Dina, how are you, my friend?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Good week. Lots of AAMC traffic rules after October 15th. A lot of acceptances coming in this week, which is amazing.
Yeah. What are some of the schools that your students have been accepted to? Or have upcoming interviews at?
VCU, UVA, Maryland, Georgetown, Michigan. It's been a good week.
One of your students got a call.
University of Utah.
Yeah. One of your students got a call at 11:55 at night. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
On the 14th, right? 5 minutes technically
14th.
Before the 15th. So I'm going to report them to the AAMC.
It's just amazing. Yeah. So
that's fantastic.
and also a lot of, some wait lists coming in, and just want to reiterate to everybody that lots of students are taken off wait lists.
Yeah.
Lots. So that is not the end of the road.
So I think it's very interesting. I think a lot of students don't understand, or it's not talked about enough, the wait list, but also and I don't know that the turnover is probably the right term. There may be a more technical term. The actual turnover of acceptances. So let's say a school has 100 acceptances. Mm-hmm. There are some schools out there that have to turn over those 100 acceptances 3+ times to actually finalize their
fill the class,
their school, to fill their class.
Yeah.
So the wait list is what that's for, right? The wait list and more interviews.
It's a domino effect.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so as students are going through this process, they're sitting right now. It's past October 15th. The first wave of acceptances are going out, and at least from MD schools. And students are like, okay, but I'm sitting here. What advice do you have for that student that's just sitting there going, please let it be me now?
If you submit it on time, and you got all your secondaries done on time, really, like in a timely manner, like August was the latest. At the 3-month mark, from when you submitted, I would consider, if a school will accept update letters, sending an update letter. Ideally, if you could get that in before Thanksgiving, because things move really fast with the holidays on the higher ed side. And some schools will accept an update letter, upload it to their portal. Other schools type it into a text box in their portal. Other schools email it to admissions, and just confirming, your interest, and update them on what you've been doing. Since you applied, did you get published? Have you been gaining clinical hours? Have you continued making a difference in your community? This is why I feel like this school's the perfect place for me. I look forward to hearing from your admissions committee. The cycle, short, sweet, less than a page. And get those in. And then if you are waitlisted and it is your first choice and a school will accept a letter of intent, you could always send a letter of intent. I've had plenty of students send a letter of intent and get an acceptance days later. But again, look up, be organized, make a spreadsheet. All
what does
the
school
schools
allow?
What
do they not allow?
Right. But it's not, it's still early. So
it's still very early. So congrats. I would love if you're watching this right now over at premed.tv and you were one of the students who was blessed with an acceptance on the 15th from the majority of
MD this schools, week.
Right, or this week. DO schools have been accepting from very early on. Texas schools sent pre-matches starting October 15th as well. If you're one of those students, let us know. share that with us. We'll throw it up on the screen. If you are new here, we answer your pre-med questions. Think of it as free pre-med advising for the hour. We'll love to help you out in whatever way we can. So let's go ahead and rock and roll. We have some questions.
Okay.
Dawa says, I worked on a research project that was accompanied by a 1-unit course teaching the principles of research. Could I put the classroom hours as research hours? This is a very common question, Dina. Students either are doing research, kind of like Dawa here, is like research with a class component, or research for credit at a school, and whether or not that belongs on an application. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I kind of feel like if you're getting credit for it, it's not really like research. But if it just shouldn't be your only research, let's put it that way.
Yeah. It's a tricky, because I don't think I've looked through, and maybe you've seen as well, maybe I've missed something, right? We use kind of a synonym for the experiences section, right? I think that's the general term, activities or experiences. We generally call that extracurricular activities, right? But I don't think that's the technical term. We just always call it that. And so in our brain, it's like, no, extracurricular, outside of class. But sometimes that doesn't always hold true. So yeah, it's a gray area.
It's gray.
It's gray. Stix98. Hey, MAP team. Just wanted to reach out and say thank you for all the advice and encouragement. Currently have 2 MD acceptances and no small part for guidance. Woo, let's get some.
We need
clapping.
It's amazing.
Awesome. I love it. Congrats. Megana, if a student had an interview at the beginning of October and then today got application status as active consideration, what should one understand from it? Also, what is to be done? Active consideration, Dina, if a school is constantly updating, which I love the fact they're communicating like where the student is in the process. What do you think active consideration means?
That they're still considering you, but
yeah, you're not rejected. You're not waitlisted. You're not accepted.
Right. They're still considering you. So it could just be that you haven't gone to admissions committee yet.
Yeah.
You know, some admissions committees only meet once a month. And maybe if you interviewed the beginning of October, which was maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it could be that you haven't even gone to committee yet. So you're under active consideration. They can't come out and say, we haven't assigned you to an admissions committee date. So yeah, I would just hold off. Don't send anything right now. I would just, unless you get waitlisted, then I would send like an update letter or something. But that's probably what that means, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah. So good. That means still all good stuff. Roed. Good afternoon, Dr. Gray and Dina. I recently tested positive for TB. No symptoms and clear x-ray. We'll discuss treatment options soon. Does it affect med school admissions in any way and becoming an MD? No. So I'll talk about the process a little bit, right? For medical school, for working in the hospital, for like, you're going to get TB tested all the time. That's just part of the process, because we don't want to obviously spread infectious diseases to our immunocompromised patients when they're in the hospital. And so every hospital system is probably a little bit different. The public health kind of rules, the people who run the wellness, employee wellness stuff at each of the hospitals are going to have different procedures, but you're not going to be the first healthcare employee who has tested positive for TB. There are protocols in place to make sure, obviously, that you don't have active TB that you're going to spread to patients. So I would just keep pushing forward, and you'll run into whatever you run into in the future. So good luck. E24, good afternoon. If you get a C your senior year and an otherwise perfect 4.0 upward trend during the last few semesters, is that a red flag for AdComs? So Dina, very limited information here other than
Yeah.
upward
What
trend.
class is it?
Yeah.
Context of what happened.
Yeah.
Were there extenuating circumstances? Was it orgo? you know?
Or go
Um,
biochem. Yeah. All that good stuff.
yeah,
And then
I think
what,
we need more
right. So we have
context.
that upward trend during the last few semesters. What did those first few
What
semesters look
happened in the
like?
beginning? Yeah.
Yeah. And is this just kind of an oopsie, which happens, or is this potentially a bigger concern? So this is a good potential use for Mapped Pro E24. Go over to mappd.com, sign up for an account. If you don't already have one, you'll get access to Map Pro for a couple weeks. You can put in all of your grades and then reach out to our team and say, hey, can you take a look at my trends? Here's what I'm concerned about. All right, let's go.
Well, this is a
All
good
right.
one for you, Ryan.
Yeah. I'm planning to
Yeah.
apply 2025 cycle. Does Mapped my LORs include TMDSAS? It does not. Unfortunately, TMDSAS has some rules and regulations that we just can't meet as a small company. And so, yeah, TMDSAS is out of the loop for my LORs.
Sorry, Mimi.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
All right. Megana, thank you for the answer. For the other question, will you be opening up Application Academy back up for students applying in 2024, 2025 for my child? Dina, talk about Application Academy. Yes, the answer is yes, we'll be opening back up. For someone who doesn't know what Application Academy is, you're the newest advisor on our team. You actually are just going to today start running your own office hours for Application Academy. I would love to hear from you because you probably are the closest to the student who's like, what is Application Academy? In your words, what would you say it is?
I would say that it is a series of you get access for weekly academies where you can hop on with different advisors and different team members, and you have different topics. We will pick apart your personal essays, the seeds, the watering parts of your essays, your secondaries. We will help you with interview prep. We do just like a general question and answer, which is what I'm doing today for my academy. And it's a group format, so there's other students with you. It's very collaborative, and peers who are going through the process who can help one another. And you're getting a great deal for it instead of just one-on-one advising.
Yeah, love it. Good. Yeah, so group advising, so much better price point for students who need that flexibility. Yeah, super valuable. So we will be opening back up. Thanks for asking. All right. What else we got? Any more questions? Is that it? When will it open back up? It'll open back up probably next month. Stay tuned for that. I don't know if we have it specifically scheduled out. Good question. Dina, as we wait for some more questions to come in,
Sure.
One of the bigger issues that students have, especially right now, is this kind of no man's land, so to speak, of like, I submitted all my applications. I haven't heard anything about interviews. I don't know what I should do next. Is it my grades? Is it my MCAT score? Is it my essays? Is it something? My LORs? I don't know what it is. For students that are in the situation of basically I've poured my heart out in these applications and it's nothing but crickets coming back. What should students do potentially right now to try to gather some information, maybe do some reflection on what's the worst case scenario here? I need to reapply. How do I make decisions moving forward?
I would definitely work with someone, and whether it's your pre-health advisor at your undergrad institution or post-bac program, or one of us, somebody who's a professional who can who's been maybe on the admission side, who can pick apart your application and kind of look at things and see if there are any holes or maybe where you need improvement. I would say after January, that would be a time after January 1st to maybe start thinking about, if you have to apply again, what do you need to do? If you haven't gotten any interviews, by the end of January, you for sure reaching back out to your letter writers. Do you need to take the MCAT again? Do you need to revise your personal statement? But what can you change? But get the advice from somebody else who can look at your application from a different viewpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just getting more eyeballs on there.
More eyeballs. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about
Kaja, what do you think about pre-med volunteering abroad programs? Dina, what are your thoughts, right? You see an application come through and it's like, hey, this student probably spent a couple $1,000 or maybe raised a couple $1,000 through some fundraising to support this trip abroad, whether it's maybe some clinical stuff, maybe it's a shadowing program. What are your thoughts on these
If
programs?
you're doing it for the right reasons, first of all, it shouldn't be your only pre-med volunteering. So you should have volunteering outside of that. If you're doing it for the right reasons, let's say that you're a global health major or you're a global health minor, and you really are interested in conducting research in like maternal fetal health in the middle of Ghana, right? And you have this opportunity to go and do a pre-med volunteering program that ties to everything else in your application. Then that's great, because you're getting the viewpoint of a healthcare system on a global level, but you also need the viewpoint of a healthcare system in our country as well. And I used to say this, like with undergrad admissions too, paying for an experience is not necessarily always the best experience on an application, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're part of like Habitat for Humanity or GlobeMed or something where you're raising money for it, but it's tied to everything else, then that's great. If you helped build, put together a school in India, for example. I had a student who did that, and he still is working on that and still raising money for that, and was able to go and volunteer and just do things there. That's great. But if it's just a random experience you're paying for just because you think it looks good, then no.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. I think that the key part of that discussion was one of the points you made of like, it's great to go get that exploration of healthcare systems and stuff in other countries, but a large part of why there's some expectation, maybe not a true requirement, but some expectation of shadowing and getting clinical experience here is to understand the I'll call a spade, the broken healthcare system that we have here, right?
Broken.
Understanding what you're getting yourself into.
Yes.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows. Rania, do you recommend going to fairs to network with schools? If so, any tips? Interesting question, Dina, since we just came back from
Yeah.
MapCon 2 weeks ago, where we had an amazing kind of variety of medical schools and podiatry schools and pharmacy schools for a pre-health conference in Baltimore. I love it. I think there's so much energy and magic that
It's great.
happens with being in person, and connecting human to human, eyeball to eyeball, handshakes, all that kind of good stuff. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had students, following our MapCon conference that emailed me and said, I was able to talk to, admission directors and reps from all five, medical schools I applied to, which is like insane. That's great.
Yeah.
Making that human connection is definitely important. You definitely want to take advantage if you have the ability to go to a fair and network.
Yeah. So there are virtual fairs that AAMC puts on, that ACOM puts on for DO schools. So check those out as well. But then also look at other schools. I know, I think it's called SUMA. Stanford has an underrepresented
SUMA,
minority
that's this
medical
fall.
association. That's February of next
SOCNOS.
year. SOCNOS.
Yeah.
Columbia has one. There's like 3 happening. I was just looking yesterday. There's one at UF. There's one in Columbia. There's one at Stanford, all happening the same first weekend of February. So go check those out. They're going to be schools all kind of parading around the country to those. So I may be at the University of Florida one. We'll see.
I hope.
Monica just got score back on second MCAT, got a 505 again, second time after much higher practice scores. Should I take a third time or just apply DO with a 505? Does it look bad to take a third time? So Dina, there's a lot in this question.
There's a lot in this question.
There's a lot.
Yes.
So let's tackle the last question first. Does it look bad to take the MCAT a third time? What are your thoughts on taking
I don't
the
think
MCAT
it
3
I
times?
don't think it looks bad. More than that, I think is like statistically, are you really going to do better? But I don't think that that's bad. And keep in mind, MCAT scores also expire, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I've read plenty of applications where applicants have taken it more than once, but applied more than once, and their scores expired, and they had to. So it's a very common thing. Are you changing the way that you're studying for it by taking it multiple times? That's the question.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So taking it 3 times, potentially not bad. I know there's at least one school out there that will say, taking the MCAT 4 times we will consider you non-competitive, which
Yep.
I think it's a shame. I specifically talked to a student who was an immigrant to this country who tried to apply to med school several years ago, had very old MCAT dates that expired, and she has to take it again, and it will be her 4th time, and she's automatically disqualified for that at this one school. It's like, it's silly. So taking it 3 times and getting the same score, like, that potentially brings in some judgment questions, right? Are you
Right.
really doing some reflection and adjusting, and what's going on there? And if you struggle in med school, are you just going to keep potentially making the same mistakes over and over again? There's another part of this question, Dina, that's like, hey, should I just apply to DO schools with a 505? This is probably a very personal pet peeve of mine of breaking MD and DO schools and applications and choices into MCAT score and GPA only. What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good practice. I think, again, it's a very holistic process, and admissions is looking at like the breadth and depth of your experiences and your journey traveled, right? So if somebody has a 511, but maybe can't contribute as much in terms of their experiences and potentially what they could contribute to medicine, um, you know, that's, I'd rather take somebody with a 505 who's, understanding of working with marginalized populations, underserved populations, who maybe has more experience, like broadly. And it just depends, but I wouldn't rule out applying to MD schools at all.
Yeah.
I hate when people say that as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I got messages just this week, a student with a 497 who got into an MD
I
school, a
saw.
503 who got into an MD school. Like, holistic
Mhm.
admissions is a thing. And this is what statistics is for, which I think I would love to have better knowledge of statistics. The one thing I do understand is that we have the average, right? The average for matriculating medical students, I think it's matriculating, not accepted. So check me on that, is a 511.9 last I looked, with a standard deviation of like a 5.7. So if you do the math, right, 511.9 minus 5.7 is a 506.2 to 511.9. About 34% of the students being accepted are within that range. Well, guess what's super close to that range? Of 505. So there's just, yeah, it's just a bad way to think about it. To go 505 is bad, and so I should only apply to DO schools. So good luck, Monica. Keep pushing. Arlene, should I avoid mentioning the role of my Christian faith regarding my purpose and calling to medicine? Dina, I would love your thoughts on this. I had a conversation just the other day with a student who was actually on the road to become an imam in the Muslim faith, and decided to then change to medical school. And a lot of his application supposedly was around his religious background. And he got advice of like, hey, your application is too focused on this. And so we had a chat. I would love to hear your thoughts on how much religion potentially should play a part in a personal statement or secondaries or any of that fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, number one, we always want you to be authentic and be yourself, right? That's the most important thing. I think that if you talk about it in a way where you're reflecting on how it's connected to your experiences and how it's shaped you, or even in secondaries, how you can connect that to say like Georgetown, for example, has like a scholarly track, I think, spirituality and medicine. Like that would be a great secondary response, because you can connect your own experience with your Christian faith to spirituality and how it's helped you in clinical and volunteer work. So I think if you make the right connections and you do it in the right way, I think it's fine, but not overboard.
Yeah. So I'm a little concerned with how Arlene posed this question, right? My Christian faith regarding my purpose and calling to medicine, right? So I think where there may be some disconnect, and potentially the student that I was talking to, without reading his personal statement, if I were reading it, right, and this is one person's opinion, if I were reading an essay and it looks like you as a person of faith want to use patients and the healthcare system as a way to spread that faith, that's where I think you may get some pushback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So your goal is to come in and be a healthcare provider, a physician, whatever you're going for. And yes, you are a person of faith, but that doesn't mean that every person that you're going to be treating, you're saying prayers for, you're proselytizing to them.
Exactly.
So
I agree.
that's the line for me. Yeah, I think you started off, right? Be authentic and know that there is potentially a line that maybe you shouldn't cross.
Yes.
Peyton asks, who should we be asking for letters of rec? Different schools have different letter writers they're asking for, but they don't all get submitted through AMCAS. So how do we separate that? So I'll talk about the kind of the nuts and bolts here. And we have through Mapped, we have the My LORs kind of letter writer service where you can request letters from your letter writers, store them on our platform, and then we'll transmit them to AMCAS and ACOMAS, not TMDSAS, unfortunately. But yeah, part of the problem, and we're going to add this data into Mapped, part of the problem is that schools have different requirements. Some schools may want a physician letter. Some schools may want a supervisor work letter. Some schools may want a science professor, non-science professor. And so the way that we generally talk about it is kind of 3 letters, right? 2 science, 1 non-science is the general rule of thumb we've thrown around forever. And it may be time to kind of rethink that. The way that we kind of talk about it now, at least internally, is you probably need about 6 letters to meet the requirements of every school that you're going to apply to. And that may be a physician letter, maybe a science letter, a non-science letter, a work supervisor letter, whatever those letters may be. And then the nice thing about AMCAS from a technical standpoint is that AMCAS, you pick and choose. Let's say you have 6 letters uploaded into AMCAS. You get to pick and choose what letters go to what schools. And so you can look through your list and go, okay, this school requires these 3. I'm going to pick those 3. This other school requires 3 different ones. I'm going to pick those 3. This other school, whatever, right? And so you're going through that process, picking and choosing. For some reason, I don't know why, AMCAS and TMDSAS don't have that process where you can pick letters that go to specific schools. So all of the letters that get uploaded to ACOMAS and to TMDSAS for DO applications for the Texas application, every letter goes to every school. And that's just part of the process, right? That's just the technical limitation of those platforms means that you're going to be sending lots of letters to schools. Then they're like, well, we don't have these requirements. And you're like, yeah, but your other school, your counterpart over here does. And so that's kind of the process. I don't know. Dina, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive.
All right. Yeah, we have, there was scrolling on there, premedworkshop.com. We have a letter of recommendation workshop this Thursday. You can sign up for it to learn a little bit more about those letters. Keely, a lot of my volunteer hours are working with animals. Would this look bad because it is not medicine or community-based, or are all volunteer hours the same? So back to authenticity. Dina, a lot of students are concerned if they have activities that aren't medicine related, healthcare related, right? I had a student several years ago who was told by her advisor, you need to stop coaching soccer because soccer has nothing to do with medicine, and that's just it's a distraction, and the schools aren't gonna like that. Keely here loves working with animals, it seems like. Is that okay?
It's definitely okay. And, it's okay to work with animals and continue being who you are. Just know that that shouldn't be your only volunteer work. You do need to have some volunteer work that is with humans, right? Because medical schools want to know that you will be able to serve your community. And I wouldn't want to see an application just with animals. So as long as you have something else, continuing that longitudinal volunteer work with animals, I think is fine. You don't want people to think, why not vet school?
Yeah. That's the first question. It's funny that this is a question with animals, because I often give the example of students in their gap year. They're like, but what, like, do I have to work full time in a healthcare setting? I'm like, no, like a lot of times students are black and white. So they think 100% or 0%, and it only counts if it's 100%. And so I'll often give the example. I'm like, if you want to go volunteer at the zoo for 20 hours a week, go do that. If that's a passion of yours and it lights you up, and then the other 20 hours a week, go volunteer in a healthcare setting or go work in a healthcare setting. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Right.
Good question. Vedant, is it okay having 3 W's in the first year? What should I do?
More context.
Yeah, more context. What were the W's in? What were the rest
Did you
of your
retake
grades?
them?
Yeah, have you
Are
since
they
retaken them?
prereqs?
Yeah. Let's artificially add some more context here. So
Okay.
3 W's in the first year, 3.8 in all of the other classes. They retook those classes at the same school, got A's in them. And no
Vedant said
other
it's
issues.
in math.
Okay.
Did you take the math over?
Yeah.
Or were they like calculus, statistics, right?
But Vedant was like, I'm not going to be an engineer. Yeah. W's at the end of the day, right, are not horrible, but is it potentially painting a picture of running away from hard classes, maybe taking them at a different institution where it's easier? Or does it paint a picture of, oh, this person overloaded their schedule and did probably the right thing by withdrawing instead of forcing through and getting D's or F's or something?
Or had something going on in their life, like an extenuating circumstance where they had to, withdraw. And that's, that's a story that you should tell
Mhm.
in your application. But hopefully, if they're prerequisites, you have a plan to retake them.
Mhm.
And there's an upward trend. You said you had like a 3.8 in other courses. So,
Yeah.
if it's an isolated situation, then, you explain it.
Explain. Yeah.
Explain.
And right, time heals all wounds. If those W's were in first year and the sophomore, junior, senior year show no issues, then yeah, it's going to paint a picture of you were overwhelmed or you had something going on. So should be good. David, hey, Med School HQ. Just
David,
got my first
yay.
acceptance. Woohoo! 2 more interview
Congrats.
invites. Thanks for all your free help. I took 3
Aw,
gap years and had a 507
wow.
MCAT. To all those out there, it is possible. Woo!
Congrats, David. That's
Awesome.
amazing.
Awesome. Thanks for coming and saying hi. Nigham, if the GPA is more on the lower side, would a postbac or a master's program be better to show improvement? Yes, potentially. Right. Dean, I think a lot of students have a hyperbolic, maybe is the right word, view of
You
what
love
a
that word.
low
It's your favorite
GPA.
word.
I've used it
If I had to
multiple
pick
times
one
today.
favorite word.
I love the hyperbole version of it too, because that's a
Yeah.
fun word to say. A lot of students are like, I have a 3.7, it's low. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, what?
Like,
Obviously, not a ton of
why is the
context here.
GPA on the lower side? Are there classes that are, do you have C's, D's, more context? I mean, do you need a post back to recover pre-med courses? Do you need a post back that's graduate level courses to record enhancer? Do you want a special master's program to demonstrate competency in medical school graduate courses? It just depends on your situation. But yeah, if it's really low, then also, was it like 10 years ago? So demonstrating that you can perform well in courses more recently is
Yep.
important.
Yep. Yeah. But that's exactly what postbacks and master's programs are
Yeah.
for, is showing that upward trend, showing that academic ability. Calixto Pablo, is it feasible
Oh,
to
this is a
join the
question for
Army
you.
Reserves part-time while in med school instead of taking the HPSP to help with partial funding for med school? Would this avoid the military match? I don't know, is the question. I do know when I left active duty, I did join the Air National Guard, and there was someone in the Guard that was planning on going to medical school. But there are so many nuances to being in the Guard or reserves, including like, what are your duties? What's your job title? And if you're going to medical school and your job is needed in a deployment, hey, guess what? The world is kind of in turmoil right now. World War III is probably not super far away, unfortunately, which is probably a little hyperbolic. but yeah, if the reserves, if you're a munitions person in the Army Reserves and they need you, they're not going to care you're in medical school, because you're signed up for the reserves. And so you're going to have to talk to a lot of people. You're going to have to get a lot of assurances. But I would be careful with that route. The HPSP route, they're paying for you to go to medical school. You are a future asset to be a physician in the military. If World War III breaks out, they're not going to do anything to you because your goal is to be a physician in the military. That's why they're paying for you. And so you are in a protected status to make sure you finish school and get your training so that you can come out and actually work as a physician, where you may not have that protected status in the reserves. Sarah, is it bad to get a letter of rec from a TA even if the professor cosigns? Dina, I love that, the extra part, right? If a physician or a professor is co-signing it, does that invalidate a letter if it's from a TA? Does it make it lesser than?
I don't think so. I think it just depends. Like, if it's a class that you really need the letter from, like you need a science letter, and it's a class that has a lot of students and this is the policy for the professor, then there's not much you can do, and that's fine. But it shouldn't be, you should have other letters from actual professors. But I've seen letters that have been, kind of co-signed and co-written with the TA and a professor. And I think that that's okay, as long as it's not as long as you have others.
Yep. Good questions today. Jonathan, I got an interview at MD School that has historically done
I can
open
answer this.
file one-on-one, but this year changed to Kira talent. Would this be like prepping for Casper or an MMI? So Kira, and then I'll throw it to you, Dina. Kira is a tech platform that a lot of schools use to conduct either asynchronous interviews or to conduct MMIs. So the word Kira to me doesn't actually tell me what style of interview. I don't know, maybe if you have more insight into that.
Yeah, Kira is the platform. It's basically a platform. You're going onto this Kira platform, and the school is setting up whatever format. So if it's like an MMI, you click on links to enter each MMI room. If it's asynchronous or somebody's recorded asking you a question, you would just click on each session. So it's basically an equivalent of like Zoom rooms in a way, but it's more streamlined.
Yeah.
And there's no wiggle room with Kira in terms of like if you're in an MMI and you have 5 minutes in each, like it bumps you right out and you have to go to the next one. So prepping for Casper or MMI, that's like, situational judgment questions, ethical questions, but I mean, people could be using Kira for anything, really. Yep. So I think a little more context.
Yeah. So Jonathan, I would reach out to the school potentially just to see if they've changed their interview style, or if they're just doing Kira for maybe asynchronous one-on-one.
Yeah.
Good question. Boy, became a middle school science teacher for the gap year. Work 80 hours
God bless you, boy. I've been there.
Less time for clinical volunteering each week. Lots of research and clinical hours from college. Should I update schools? So I'm not sure what potentially the update would be, unless potentially, Dina, the student is saying, hey, I potentially said I was going to do a lot more clinical experience during my gap year, and it turns out that I can't do that. At what level should a student worry about maybe, this is a strong word, but I'll just use it, right? Fraud of like, oh, I lied to you saying I was going to get 1,000 more hours, but I only got 100.
Things happen, right? I think on the admissions end, in reading applications, admissions can kind of separate and see, hours that you completed hours versus anticipated hours. And there's the understanding that maybe those anticipated hours might not happen because they're anticipated. If this is like a new job where you didn't list it on your AMCAS, I think update letters are update letters. Update schools on what you've been doing. Did you take this position as a middle school science teacher just to help, increase, STEM knowledge, STEM awareness, for children, just kind of tie it back to how you're utilizing your science knowledge in this position. I wouldn't like go crazy saying, and I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that, and I was supposed to do this. Like, try not to be negative about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Good. Peter, have you guys heard about the linkage agreement? The linkage agreement programs from post-bac programs to MD schools. Yeah. Do you have any opinions about it? Yeah, so linkage agreements are very common, and they come in various shapes and sizes. Some linkage agreements are kind of not really linkage agreements at all. It's like, hey, maybe we'll interview you if you can get a 517 MCAT score and maintain a specific GPA in this program. Some linkage agreements are super strong and says, hey, if you get this GPA in our post-bac program, you get an acceptance to the medical school that we're tied to. And so you just have to kind of look at the kind of the fine print of what that linkage agreement actually is, to see if it's something that you should go toward. I generally have said, like, you shouldn't pick a post-bac program for specific linkages. Like, find the program. Yeah, find the program that you're going to thrive at, that works well with your schedule and flexibility and whatever you need support-wise. And if it has a linkage agreement, great. If not, the whole point of doing a post-bac program is to improve your application anyway, which is going to increase your chances of getting into med school.
And some have fine print, like, the med school will only interview, if you have like a 3.7 or above, or will only interview, 10% or 4 students. So let's keep that in mind.
Yeah. Karima, is MCAT score still taken into consideration after the interview? Or is it that once you get your interview, they just consider it if you're a great fit, regardless of stats at that point? Dina, this is our favorite answer. It depends on the admissions committee, right? Everyone has a different process.
It depends on the admissions committee and the school, right? But usually it's a good sign that you've made it to the interview, you've gotten an interview, and, it might be discussed at admissions committee about your MCAT score, but you're over a huge hurdle by getting to the interview point. So they see you, someone who read your application or multiple people who read your application see you as a good fit for their school and want to get to know you more.
Yep. So depending on the school, some may still take it into account. Some may throw it out the window. Soliloquy, what would be considered excessive shadowing? A physician offered me their entire week in a hospital. I want to see as much as I can, but I also want to be courteous. If they offered it to you, right, then yeah, I would be okay with that. Go for it. You're probably going to be bored at the end of the week, but yeah.
But that also is the life of a physician, right? So there's something to be said for seeing like what a full week looks like.
Yeah. Awesome. LG or IG. Sorry if this is unusual. I recently left the religion I grew up with that considers higher ed to be evil. So I never pursued. I just turned 24. Is it worth me to start undergrad for pre-med? If you want to be a doctor.
Yeah. You have to have a bachelor's degree if you want to be a doctor.
You're still a baby. Yeah. Go for it.
A lot of religion questions today. Yeah. You should have Dr. Wright here for this. Okay.
Zara, hello. I took Orgo 1 first year and got a W, then took Orgo 2. I'm retaking Orgo 1 this semester and just figured out that it does not count for credit at my institution. Would medical schools still look at it? So I'm super confused how you took Orgo 2 without Orgo 1, first of all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what your institution does. For your medical school application, you report every class, every grade. So that's how it works. Brianna, hello. I'm concerned about a, quote, red flag on my app. I took a prereq at community college. At the time, I was planning on PhD, struggled with professor teaching style, working 30 hours a week, and class time worked better.
Well, what's the red flag?
What's the red flag?
Is it the grade, or is it that it was taken at community college? Because that's not.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it depends on the class and the school, but
yeah. Don't see any issues yet.
More context.
More context. Brian, any advice for applying to dual MD, MPH, or DO MPH programs? I'm interested in medicine and have a lot of experience in public health. So this question comes up a lot, Dina. I'm assuming Stanford had an MD, MPH pathway. Maybe not. But I think a lot of students assume that the MD, MPH, or DO MPH is similar to the MD, PhD, or DO PhD, where it's a combined application and there's more stuff you have to do. Most of the programs that I know of, you just get into the MD school and then raise your hand at some point going, hey, I want the MPH too. I don't know if you have any other ideas.
Or it's like a separate application process, right? Like you have to also apply concurrently to the graduate school for the MPH. So it's one or the other. It's not it's not similar to like MD PhD or like an MSTP program or anything like that. So I guess advice, I mean,
go for it. If that's what you want.
Go for it. That's what you want. Yeah. And you're really interested in public health. There are a lot of people who go to med school and do a combined MBA with it, with an MD. More work. But
it's more work. If that's what you want, go for it. Bilal, how can an applicant stand out to top tier med schools beyond high stats and hours? Dina, you used to be at a quote top tier med school. Number one, what the heck is a top tier med school? And number two, how does an applicant stand out?
I feel like the mentality of top tier is not a good one because it's, it's like undergrad, like top tier school. All med schools are top tiers, and in my view,
in the US,
getting in the US, like it's difficult to get into any medical school, right? So I think beyond high stats and hours, yeah, I mean, what you would consider a top tier school, they're not accepting every single applicant with a 4.0 and a 528, right? So what are the deciding factors? And it's all about fit. It's all about, do you fit into their mission? And could they see you as part of the community? Can you contribute to their program, to medicine and beyond? If it's a research heavy institution and you have zero research, but you have perfect stats, not a good fit, right? So it just depends, but you can become a doctor going to any school. Yes.
Any school. It's not going to hold your career
back.
Any
school. No.
Yep. Israel Hernandez, I want to apply to DO schools and I'm going to ask my company commander, who's a physician for an LOR. Her job title is different in the Army versus her civilian job. Would it still count as a physician letter of recommendation? Yeah, why not? I mean, I would just have her write it as a physician. And obviously her title is going to be whatever it is, but she's still a physician who's commenting on your potential future as a physician, as a potential future colleague of hers. Yeah, go for it. Ali, currently my research hours far surpasses my clinical hours. I'm worried about them having questions about why I'm pursuing an MD and not a PhD. Is that a problem? Am I being neurotic?
Worry train.
I don't have any of my overthinking pre-med club stickers on me. But this does come up. I have questioned students when I am looking at their application, Dina, and it's like, you look like a researcher, not a future physician. And a lot of times it's due to poor reflection and introspection about their journey. And so they're just not telling their story well. Right. But it may come up. And so, Ali, what should Ali do here?
Just you do have to make sure you have some clinical hours, like to apply, and make sure that your again, like Dr. Gray said, your reflection in your secondary responses, your personal statement, your activities on MCAS are, reflective of patient encounters, serving patients, wanting to, work with people. Outside of the research. If all your answers are geared towards research, then they're going to ask, why not PhD?
Yeah. All right, we got time for one more question. We got to end just a couple minutes early today. Let's make it a good one. They've all been good today. All good questions. Dylan asks, I know that a 124 cars isn't super awesome, but does that kill my application? That's an easy answer. No, of course not. Does not kill your application. So yeah. Good job. Just one small part. All right, Dina, we're going to end a little bit early today.
Sure.
Any parting words of wisdom for
for everyone who's
there?
waiting on the waiting train now. Just think about some update letters, and it's the cycle's far from over. And if you do have to reflect and come to the point where you have to apply again, get some help and get some other eyes on your application.
I love it. We are here typically every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then I'm usually doing IG Live myself on Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern. So come hang out with us, ask questions. And if you have any ideas for other things that we can help you with, let us know, because we're trying to put out as much information as possible for you all. Check out medicalschoolhq.net/advising if you are looking for some one-on-one help, or Application Academy for our group coaching. Have a wonderful day. Dina, thank you so much.
Have a great